Well, good morning. This is Peter Frank, and this is the Church Online Communications Comprehensive. So we are on session 10, which is just crazy to think how far we've come. It's gone by very fast. Today we're going to be digging into blogs and emails. So I'm excited to get into this topic. You'll notice that I'm dressed a little bit more casually than normal, and I do apologize for that. I always feel a little weird not having a collar, like a shirt collar, not a clergy collar. But wearing a t-shirt at work is a little uncomfortable for me. However, this afternoon, we are hosting our annual Operation Fun. It's for a United Neighborhood. And this is something that Concordia Publishing House does every year, and we've been doing it for many, many years. This is only my second year of participating. It always seemed to conflict with my schedule before, but I did it last year, I did it this year, or I'll do it again this year. What it is that we take donations and from employees from other area businesses and partners, and then we host a big event for the neighborhood. And we donate backpacks, and we provide food, and we just have a good time just engaging with our community and sharing with them, hearing their stories. It's a lot of fun. We are in a lower income neighborhood, and so it's a blessing for these families to receive free backpacks with school supplies. But it's a blessing for us to be able to share the gospel with them, to show them what we do here at CPH, and to just remember why we do it. And it's for people who haven't heard the gospel. So it's a fun event. That's why I'm wearing red. Everybody on our team will be wearing red as we go outside later on today. So thank you for being here with us. I'm back in the office. Last week I was out in Chicago area for a conference and at my home church. If you haven't tuned into that session, please do so. It was a great time, and I got to talk with some people that I've known for many, many years. So that was a lot of fun. I want to make sure everything seems to be working with people being here live. If you can, let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear what your church name is, city, state, see how wide of a reach we have today. I'll make sure that I can view the questions. I've had some issues with that before. So go ahead and leave a comment if you can. I would appreciate it. And we're going to go ahead and get started on our materials for today. So let me transition to my slide. Here we go. There's the title slide for today. Again, my name is Peter Frank. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Concordia Publishing House in our church supplies area. If you are joining me for the first week, welcome. There's my contact information. If you have been with us all 10 weeks, you're probably tired of seeing my email address, but that's okay. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out. I love to talk with people who are in the field and working and using communication strategies. It's a lot of fun to hear how new and different ways these tools are being implemented. So good. It looks like we've got it. Kelly's here and Jane's here and Diana and see, I'm only showing 4 comments at a time, so I know there's others who are here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for commenting. Hopefully I'll be able to read those as we go. It's always so fun just trying to figure out this whole Facebook Live thing. So maybe that's looking a little bit better as we go down. Well, I can see 6 comments now, so all right, well, that's okay. Thank you very much for being here. All right, let's switch back here and get into today's topic at hand. So today we are talking about establishing a communication hub for your church. And the real question we're trying to answer is, how can we make our media more effective? And this is a very broad topic. We could take this a number of different ways, and I feel like I say that each week. Communications is such a broad topic. So we're going to narrow in on a few key things, and we're going to call back to a couple weeks ago as we were talking about the content framework. So that's where we're going to start today as we look at our outline. We're going to focus first on a review of the content framework. This is a new concept that I haven't heard talked about in church communications. It's a fairly new concept for me in terms of communications in the broad sense, and we'll get into that in just a second. I don't need to jump ahead. Then we're going to talk about blogs in the church and email communication. Those are our 2 big areas today. Within email communication, we're going to talk about canned spam and what it is, and how we in the church should respect this and use this. And I think it's a really good thing just from a communication principle standpoint. So that is what we're going to get into today. Let's talk about content framework. So if you were here a few weeks ago, you will remember that a content framework is an organized manner of distributing your content across all your communication channels to lead your audience through a defined journey map. And the journey map was a few weeks before that. Well, let me show this visual because this is a very lengthy description, and it's good and it's detailed and it accurately portrays what a content framework is. But let me show you because that always seems to be a little bit easier. So last week we talked about church websites. That is the home base. That is where you have your conversions. And please keep in mind, conversions is not like an altar call kind of thing here. We're not talking about what's going on in the heart. We're talking about what's going on at the keyboard, what's going on in real visible ways where your audience is taking the actions that you laid out before them to move them farther along in the journey map. So that's what your website is for. That is what you are trying to draw people in. Like into your home base, you control that environment. And that's where those actions like registering for an event or downloading something or just letting you know that they're there and taking that next step that they're interested in learning more. Those are the conversions we're talking about. All right, so the step before that is where we're focusing today, and that's the media empire. Rather than conversions, we're talking about correspondence. And you'll see it's probably small for you there, blogs and emails. That is the key thing that we're going to talk about today. So media empire, we'll get into that in more detail, but that leads to your home base. The thing that leads to your media empire is your outposts. That is your conversations, your social media, your search, all your paid advertising. That's where we're going to get into a little bit next week. Social media is our topic for next week, and it is a very big topic, and we're not going to be able to cover everything, but we're going to talk about it from a strategy standpoint. And so that leads you into your media empire. So it's a 3-step process. It's starting at your home base and figuring out what things you lay around that, and then around that in another circle, and everything's to draw people in. All right, let's dig in. Why? Oh, I forgot I had the importance. Why is this important? Well, content frameworks, we'll review this quickly. I know I repeat myself a lot, but having a content framework is important because it emphasizes movement on the journey map. It downplays the importance of any one channel, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Gives each channel a specific purpose, and this is why I really like it, is because it does make each channel easier to implement, and it gives each message a call to action. That's going back to the conversions or micro conversions as we go. So, without further ado, media empire. So, the media empire is your long-form, one-way communication, and that's in contrast to your outposts, which are short-form, two-way communication, conversations back and forth with your audience. What we're doing here today on social media, being able to converse, and I think I've got my comments actually up and running now so that I can see everybody who is here. Sharon and Gary are here. Sharon's from Lower Burrell, Pennsylvania. Pastor Gary, welcome. And then there we've got Kelly Rafato. She is there in Charleston, West Virginia. Diana from Albuquerque, or I don't know if I can pronounce that. It's not Albuquerque. It's Aqueboque. Pardon me for my mispronunciation. But in New York. So very good. All right. So let's switch back to media empire. The long form one-way communication. And we're going to talk about it in 3 ways, although we're going to focus on 2 specific things. And we'll touch on the third at the very end. So the 3 ways that we're looking at it today, first off is the blog. And I shared a poll yesterday in our Facebook group and asked who had a blog. And the vast majority of people said, nope, we don't have one. And that's okay. That's kind of what I expected. Because when you think of a blog, you've got a very definite idea in mind. And it's not usually at the church level. So I'll pull up those results here as we're talking. The more I pull up, the slower everything will go. So hopefully it's not going to be too slow. But thinking about blogs as a syndicated feed, and we'll look at a few examples of that. Let me bring it over here just so I'm not staring off into the distance. So where were our final results on that? The percentage. It's sputtering along on there. So we had 36 of the 45 people who answered that said, nope, we don't have a blog. And that's, like I said, I kind of expected that. In fact, the fact that we had 9 people say, yes, we do, is super exciting to me, because that's a good number. So that is the first thing we're going to get into today. The second thing we're going to get into is emails. And this is much more familiar to churches. Mass emails, sending out your newsletter. Those are the things that I think most churches are doing. And so I didn't ask the question of if you're doing that or not, because I kind of assume that you are. But I did ask how you're doing it. And this was just a few hours ago, so we've still got plenty of time to get some responses. But what services are you using for your email? And it looks like the majority of people are using either MailChimp or Constant Contact, which again is what I expected. MailChimp is very high. I put a few others out there that I know aren't as common. And we did also have a response from Jillian saying Church 360 members, which I was so glad to hear. Although we'll talk about how you can use our Church 360 products in that way in a little while. And there's some advantages and disadvantages. It's actually a different purpose than something like MailChimp. And the type of emails we're talking about today will be more along the lines of MailChimp. All right, so the last one that we're only going to touch on briefly is video. And this is the one that has the most exciting new possibilities and is also the hardest to implement. And we'll talk about why in a few minutes. So going back to blogs, a blog is an online feed that is regularly updated and sorted chronologically with the newest information first. That's how we're defining this. And I like to put these wordy definitions out there just so that then I can come back and explain them in a little bit different fashion. And so when we say feed, we're talking about an RSS feed. And an RSS feed, which I should have pulled what that acronym is, I don't even know off the top of my head. It's a way for your users to subscribe to this syndicated content. And there's many different RSS readers. There's Chrome extensions. That's what I use. And what it does is it compiles all of these different posts as they're put out there and lets you know when there's new things. And this is implemented in a number of different ways. One way that I use quite a bit is subscribing to YouTube channels. It's the same concept. It's a syndicated feed. I say, I want to follow this, notify me when there's new, in this case, videos, whenever it's posted. Well, a blog is the same thing. And if you haven't used any kind of RSS reader or subscribed to a blog in that way, I encourage you to do so, even if it's just to kind of understand that process a little bit more. But it's creating your own media channel when you do that. It's pulling things from different sources and putting it into your own personalized channel. And that is where, as we talk about blogs in the church, we have such a great opportunity to be able to distribute information, to distribute content to our audiences in a way that they're really opting in. Now, another way that people can subscribe to blogs is through email updates. And there's a number of ways you can do that as well. Some of your blog services will provide automatic notification to people who subscribe, and so it's all built in within that platform. In other cases, you can utilize a combination of email and RSS to distribute regular emails that pull in your content from your blogs. And Seth Hins was talking about that with MailChimp. And I'm curious, I want to talk to him more about that to see how we can share that with people and make it easy to do. I think we've got some blog posts about that already from a while back, and maybe we can do some more with it. That's an exciting idea to combine these two different mediums. So going back to the definition, the important thing about a blog is that it's regular content that's updated, and we talk about updating your content in each of these different channels, but especially here it shows the latest at the top. And it's kind of this was around before news feeds and Facebook, but it's putting the most relevant and current information at the very beginning. And that makes it easy to glance at and see if you are missing something or if there's something new that's been posted. Okay, so let's talk about why they're so often utilized. Well, a blog lets you keep latest post keeps it timely. it just puts that latest, most relevant information right at the top without you having to think of how to organize it. And when you think about like a news page on your website where it's really static content that you update regularly, you're going to do this naturally. You're going to put the latest at the top. This just saves you that time of doing it, and you don't have to go in and think about formatting, think about structure of the page. You just put it out there as a post, and it always shows up at the top. So that's one way that the blogs benefit you in the church. The thing that I'm excited to talk about and show you in Church 360 Unite is the way to make multiple feeds in order to keep things relevant. So let's switch over to Unite real quickly. And this is not to be a big sales pitch. You can do this in a number of different platforms, but this is our platform that you recommend. This is our Light of Christ Lutheran Church. And this is our kind of a sample site that we've used in a variety of ways. So if you remember from previous weeks, you can sign in here. And I'm signed in as an administrator, which gives me different permissions. And I get this admin toolbar up at the top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Pages. And we're going to talk about this idea of multiple feeds in the context of a church website. So you see the remainders of our navigation from a couple weeks back. Over in the top right is where we can add pages. The second page option there is what we call feed page. And we even put the little note, you can use this for blogs. We don't want to call it a blog because it has this connotation of just being like personal opinions. I think we've got a slide coming up on that in a few moments. But you can go ahead and create a new one. And I'm just going to call this my test feed right now, just to keep things real simple and straightforward. I'm going to move that over just right into our main navigation, and I'll save that. And this just gives a brief demo. So there's our test feed there. And when I go in here, it says there's no post yet. We'll click Edit Page, and I'm able to create a new post. And essentially, it's the same WYSIWYG editor that we have on our page views. It's just like you would see in an email, like in Microsoft Office or Outlook, in just a typical email, but also things like MailChimp. And you give your post a title, and you give it a description, information. All of that goes in here, and you can add different media like photos or audio or video. It's real simple, and I'm sure this is very familiar to you. Now, what's great about this is that you can create these posts as drafts. You can schedule them to go out at certain times, so we can schedule it for later. As we work on the comprehensive blog posts that we put out on the Technology in Your Ministry blog, those are things that we do in the days leading up to it, and we schedule it to go out at 9 o'clock. But it's also great to just post as things come up and show what's the latest, kind of like a news article. So that's the real basic aspect of it. We'll go ahead and close this. Oops. I'm going to create this real quick so that we have that, and then I should be able to close that. Yeah. There's this button here, and this is just a text link. In some of our themes, we make it an icon. I'm going to open it in a new link. It says RSS feed. That's what we've been talking about. And when you go here, and you'll see it's basically just a bunch of code. It's XML, which is how RSS readers will be able to interpret it and style it according to their styles. So that's a little small. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah, that's fairly large. There we go. So at least this gives you an idea, even if you don't understand it, that this content is structured in a way that can be read by a variety of different tools. So that's what RSS does, is it puts it in XML. And when you go to subscribe to an RSS feed, you can copy this URL and paste it into your reader, and it'll interpret it accordingly. You can also just go, whoa, that is really large. Sorry about that. All right, we'll zoom back a little bit. You can also just go and copy that link. And so wherever you are, if you see RSS, and let me switch back to our one post. I want to show you this icon here. Yeah, we'll go back here. This icon is kind of that very common indicator that says RSS. And so if you see that anywhere, even if it's like often in orange, that'll tell you that you can subscribe to the blog. And so in the church, you may, if if you're talking about this, you may need to explain that a little bit. It's not always as simple as just saying subscribe to our blog. That could mean a number of different things, and this provides a great opportunity to coach your members on ways to use the internet too, especially if they're uncomfortable with it, if it's not something that they use in their day-to-day life. But there's so many different ways to subscribe to it. RSS is really the best way to distribute this content, and how you encourage people to do it may vary depending on what tools you're using. So let's switch back here to Unite, and I'm going to go back up to the Pages area. So we were able to create one, and we dropped it in here. I'm going to move it, actually I'm going to move other things up because we've got this. So we've got announcements. Because my zoom is so large, the scrolling isn't working properly for me. So we'll put that up there. So that's just a regular blog. But the point is, you can have as many of these as you want, and that allows you to do it for a specific purpose. Each one has its own goal. And so as we come back to our PowerPoint here, multiple feeds allow you to make the content really relevant, and we'll look at a few of those examples in just a moment. All right, so the long format allows for substance, like we showed before as we were looking at it in the WYSIWYG editor. It's just like the tools of a web page, but with the different media types and the space of a website, you can go really in depth. And while we typically try to keep our blog posts around 500 words, I'm a little bit lengthier than that just because I'm long-winded. But some blog posts can go up to 2,000 or 3,000 words, and they really dig into a topic. And that's the great thing about blogs and feeds, is that you can use it in so many different ways. There's some standard conventions for typical blogs, but if you're using this for any other way, you could do your entire sermon on there, and that's generally more than 500 words, unless you've got a really short sermon. But you could also put this as a continuation, almost like chapters of a book, and go into whatever length you want. So it allows you to have that substance, unlike social media where you're not expected to put a lot in there. Longer posts just don't get as much of a read-through because it's meant for scrolling and quick viewing. And like I mentioned before, the platform, whatever you use, generally allows for flexible media. It's rather uncommon that whatever platform you choose is only going to say text. You can put a text, but no images, no video. And that's where this really becomes your media empire. It's a way of distributing your content, but your content can be any format, whether that's text or video or audio or infographics or slide decks. You've got a great opportunity to mix it up and try different ones, or keep it consistent. You may have heard of vlogs, video blogs, where each post is just a video. So flexible media is great. That becomes your media empire. All right, so this is where we get into this kind of stereotypical blogs. Blogs are not just for personal opinions, and I hear this time and time again, that pastors will say, well, I don't want to have a blog at my church. I don't have that much to say. I don't want to talk about politics or anything. Because that's often what we hear. Some of the most popular blogs are on current events, on politics. The ones you hear about are generally, in news media, is generally not talked about in a positive light. They're often controversial for the sake of driving post views. There's usually advertising tied in with it, and so the more people you can get to visit, the more money you make, the more it works out as a business model. That's not what we're talking about here. That's one of the things a blog can be, but that's not the only thing. And so as we think about blogs in the church, set that aside as one option, but not the only option or the definition by any means. So let's talk about a few things that you can use it for that would be different. First off, upcoming events. When you think about your church newsletter, one of the most common forms of content in your church newsletter, the printed one we're talking about, is the upcoming events, and that's a good way to distribute that information to get people to sign up for it. Well, a blog is a great way to do that too, but here's what I like about doing it as a blog post. In the newsletter, you're putting that same thing in there week after week, which is good. Sometimes you need several weeks to get people to sign up. Sometimes it's several months. But you have to touch it each time. In a newsletter, you're rearranging it. It's desktop publishing. You're trying to get it to fit either in a predetermined space or you're trying to determine how much space you need. And so it has to be addressed every single time you update the newsletter. With a blog or a feed for upcoming events, you can post that once and that becomes its home. Now you can reference it in other ways, you can link to it, you can share it on social media, but it has a permanent spot on your blog for people to read, to understand what's going on, to sign up for it. You can put a link to the sign up page. So that's what I really like about it. And it always puts the latest. So as things are announced, it posts it there. And of course you can schedule these out in advance. And so you may hear about an event that's going to be coming up and the leader of the event wants you to distribute that to the congregation. You say, that's 6 months from now. I don't need to be talking about this for a whole 6 months. You can pick when you want to do it. And maybe it's 2 months from now you want to put an announcement about this out. You can do it now, schedule it, get it off your plate, and it's ready to go. And you'll know it's going to be posted at the right time. So that's upcoming events is a great way to use blogs. Another one is prayer requests. Now, I'll say this quite often, and I'll get people who kind of bristle at this idea of putting prayer requests in a blog. And I think that goes back to the reputation of blogs being opinion-based, being very public. That's not the case at all. And let's switch back to Unite for a second, and I'll show you what I mean by how you can use that. Like we've talked last week, one of the great things about having websites and being able to contextualize it is to put things behind a password protection. And so if we want to create, and actually we may already have that, looks like we got it as a page. Let me go ahead and I'll delete prayer requests as a page. Click up here to add a feed and create prayer requests. And we'll plug that in over here. You see, I've got this set to be private, members only. It was already on there, which means you have to sign in to view this. And so we'll save those changes. Let's jump over to that. And I'm filling up my navigation just because it's visible for you there. Not that I would recommend doing it this way. But, if John Doe hospitalized, you can say, please keep John in your prayers as he has been hospitalized after a fall. You can post that in there and you can just publish it, create it. The only people who are going to see that are the people who sign into your church. And the only people who can sign into your church or into your church website are the people that you invite. Now, what I like about this is it allows you to have one central hub for communication. And if you want to put an update, you can say, John has been moved into the rehab center. And you can post that update there, and it's all within that same context. Again, not public, but it creates this central location for you to talk about this. And so not only does it keep that privacy in place, and of course you should never post a prayer request that you don't have the right to share, just like you wouldn't announce it publicly in church unless you've received John's permission to share that. Those all go without saying, even though I just said them. That still applies, but it's creating this placement for you to share this information in an appropriate context and in a single location. And I don't know how many times I've had prayer requests that go out into a mass email and there's a reply all with questions like, well, which hospital is John at? And then there's another reply all that says he's here. You post it here once and people can come back to it and learn and hear what's going on. So that's what I like about using blogs for prayer requests. All right, let's jump to the next option that we have here. Bible study notes. Now, I have a personal pet peeve of having a lot of paper, and it's not really a concern for the environment as much as it's an OCD kind of thing. And if you look around my office, you'll see there's, go this direction, you'll see that there's not much on my shelves, but a few things. My wife laughed at my desk when I talked about how there was a mess because I had one piece of paper on there. I don't keep any paper on my desk. And so my personal pet peeve is having a lot of paper. papers coming back from Bible study. I don't often review it, but what I would love is to have a blog that has all of that in there. And so each week at the end, or maybe even beforehand so I can read it, you can post a summary of the Bible study session and links to PDFs of your Bible study notes. It's also a great place for the Bible study leader to share the information that couldn't be included because of time constraints. And so often, Bible study leaders will dig into it and find additional stuff, and they only can share a portion of it in the time allotted. A blog would allow you to share it in that way. Now, going back to the multiple blogs, you're not going to want to mix up announcements and prayer requests and Bible study notes one right after the other because it's not relevant to everybody. So going to the multiple feeds lets you do it in that context. All right, I do have to watch my time. I realize I've already been talking for a half hour. I apologize for that. Try to go a little bit faster. Sermons. Sermons are a great way to use blogs because we hear them and we can watch them in person, maybe watch a recording. But oftentimes there are things that are said that go quickly or that you want to remember the exact wording. You could post your sermon text. If you're a pastor or if your pastor actually writes it out, post it up there. The one thing you have to be careful about is appropriate references. And I think looks like I switched it. Sorry. Sermons. There we go. I was looking at the wrong thing. Now I'll look up here. It'll allow you to, you'll want to reference all of your different sources, but that's a great way for people to dig in deeper. So pastors, of course, from their years at seminary are used to referencing accordingly. And so you want to make sure that you do that, but I think that's a great option. The last one that I'm going to talk about today, and I will switch back to my PowerPoint, sometimes I get them confused, is requests for assistance. And so often this happens that there are needs in the congregation that they are announced as a request for help. And this can come in a variety of different forms. So it may be somebody who is seeking help with lawn care. It may be somebody who needs a ride to church. It could be based on events that you're looking for volunteers for the upcoming barbecue. There's a lot of needs that that go on in a church that are very often met by the members of the congregation. This is this community of believers that support each other. And so it's not, it shouldn't be, we need money for this, we need money for this, we need money for this. But it should be looking at all the time and talents that you have in the congregation and asking for help for pursuing your goals. And so if you do this in a feed, the most recent can always come at the top. But going back to that commenting option, people can know when the need is met. And so if you post on the blog and people say, I can do this, and then when you're done with, you have no more need in that area, you can be like, all right, thank you, everybody. We have met the need. Look forward to working with you on the next thing or something along those lines. But at least you can communicate back to the members, to your audience, without having to do it in a mass email to everybody or reply all. So those are just some simple suggestions for how to use feeds, how to use blogs in church communication. Taking a step back to that overarching picture, in fact, I'll jump to that just so that we can talk about it in that way. This is the fun part about PowerPoints, is that I can transition back and forth and share it. So if you think about this type of content in the very center, prayer requests probably are not the best one because that is a very private one and the rest of those are public. But upcoming events, you put the full details of your event into the media empire. Your outposts, your social media and stuff will draw people to that. And your home base where they convert is where you want to send people from the post. And so thinking about it in that way, your post should have some kind of lead into the next action, some kind of call to action. Often buttons are the way that works. We've talked about that before. But it sends people to that place where they then convert. And so that's how this fits in the overall scope. So the media empire is where you'll spend a lot of your time keeping it up to date, posting content. Certainly in outposts with social, you'll do that as well. But the home base, then you just set that up for that one conversion, whatever that may be, and drive people to it. All right, so before I get too farther, if you've got any questions, go ahead and put them into our chat. There's been a few things Chris Brown from Chicago is there. Carla from Advent Chapel Hill is there. So thanks for joining us. But Cindy posted that RSS stands for Rich Site Summary, format for delivering regularly changing web content. So thank you for that official definition, because I didn't have that off the top of my head. Gailey said that the volume went down for some reason, so I hope that you can hear me now. Chris is asking, is there a way members can submit prayer requests for inclusion in the blog? There's a few different ways to handle it. That could be a form on your website that goes directly to the church office. With prayer requests, you don't want to necessarily make it publicly available and privately public, available for your entire church audience at the submission, because oftentimes it'll overflow, and so you want some kind of monitoring in there. One thing you could do is create a group within Church 360 Unite that may be like your prayer chain group, and allow anybody to join that and keep that as those kind of ad hoc prayer requests. Just like many churches don't ask for all the prayer requests at the time during the service, you have to be careful, because sometimes people don't understand the most appropriate way to share prayer requests. So that's good. Kelly's saying, need ideas of good workflow to accommodate those who require hard copy lists, like prayer lists, Sunday morning volunteer schedules, Bible study notes. You do a hybrid of things right now. Having a feed for that could work out well, and you could call it this Sunday at Redeemer or something, and then have in this single post all of the different things going on, who's volunteering, who's, what's going on in what rooms, all of that. You could even post that a week or a few days ahead of time. So that's just one idea. And Gary said, can you show that last picture? Let me switch back to that real quick as we're talking. I think that's the one that you mentioned. If not, let me know. So that is our content framework. And 2 weeks ago, we went into this into great detail. And then the last thing Kelly said, so specific question about events, better to have them on your site as a blog versus putting them on Facebook as a Facebook event. That's really a matter of opinion, I would say. It depends on what kind of event and what you're hoping to accomplish with the registration. So by that I mean, if you're thinking about using your website for conversions and using that as a way to further reach people in your audience, get additional information for follow-up, if it's like a public event, you want people to sign up for registration, Facebook's not a great way for that, because you don't get all that registration information from it. You get one name, and then you can go to their profile to find more. So thinking about it in the comprehensive, we had a sign-up form that you all submitted to receive the weekly updates of this course. Now, we are putting a Facebook event out there in the comprehensive group so that you can get those reminders and that notification. I could do that as a separate event using a different tool on our website, but in that case the whole goal is just for the reminders. So in many cases the answer may be a both and, that you have a form on your website for people to register to and get you more information, but then you also put a Facebook event out there so that the attendees can get those reminders in the place that they're most comfortable. But even still, I'd put a blog post out about it that has all of the detailed information, because that creates this central location where people are going to find out more. So that goes back to that whole media empire idea. All right, let's move into emails. I'm talking a lot today. I apologize. I enjoy this stuff so much. So emails. A well-executed email strategy allows you to leverage a traditional digital tactic in a modern communication manner. And I threw out those phrases. In fact, probably should have put modern in quotes as well. I say traditional because email was probably the earliest form of digital communication adopted in the church. Even before websites were very common, email was a great way to disseminate information to your members, and very commonly used. I think back to the days of dial-up internet connection and Juno accounts or AOL accounts that we had. That was, when I think about early days of email communication, my church had an email list well before they had a website. So that's why I say traditional digital tactic, because it's been around for 20 plus years. But when you think about modern communication manners, this whole concept that we're talking about, strategy, leveraging different channels for different reasons, a well-executed email strategy fits right in there. So let's talk about the benefit of email first. Oops, let's switch back there. So first off, email is great because it puts the control in the hands of the recipient. And that is a great way to empower your audience to feel in control and to not feel bombarded. And that when you send an email, different than social media messages, different than text messages, the whole idea around email is that you'll respond to it as you can. It's not immediate. But so the next point is it can be urgent or time insensitive. In most cases, unless you mark it as urgent, people understand that it's going to take some time to get a response. If you email somebody and they don't respond within 5 minutes, well, that makes sense. If you text somebody, there's a little bit of a different expectation. They're certainly different than if you call somebody on the phone too. But even a message within social media, you expect a little bit more immediate of a response than email, which you have an inbox. An inbox gives this idea that it takes a little time to sift through. So that's one of the great benefits of emails, that the urgency is not always there. Also, it's more private than most other channels. Most people don't share inboxes. Most people keep those to themselves, and so you can put more comfortable you can be more comfortable putting private information in there than something like a Facebook message. Even if it's a direct message, there's just this idea that it's more public. And at least that may be my own personal impression, but I certainly would prefer to post. If I could not do a conversation email that requires private communication, sensitive information, email is the way that I would go for that, because you really can lock down who has it. Now, of course, somebody can forward it on to others and that, but I still think it's one of the more secure ways. The other thing that is great with email, more so than social media, is that it allows for creativity and content. So if you're going and posting on somebody's wall on Facebook, it's mostly text. You can add an image there, you can add a video, but it's not this kind of desktop publishing option. And within emails, you get the same kind of editor, WYSIWYG editor, where you can put tables, you can add an image here, you can add a link here, you can format the text in different ways. That allows for some creativity. Now, too much creativity in emails can be a bad thing, but you can certainly make it match the branding of your church. Put your church logo in there, put the picture in there, have the same kind of style on buttons and call to actions. You're not reliant on just text links. So that's another benefit of email. But let's get into the three primary types of church emails that I think should be utilized. First off, there we go. Three primary types of church emails. And I'm curious to see if we can get some reactions here to help me understand how people are using this. So if you use this first type of email, go ahead and like this, and I'll see if I can get those reactions just to get some immediate feedback. So the first one is the newsletter format. So the newsletter format is where you put a lot of different messages into one email and you send it to a lot of different people. And that's why we've got those three lines at the top. So if you have an email newsletter, please go ahead and like this to give me that notification, and we'll test this out and have some fun and see if it works. It's easy to find these reactions on live video. When you're doing it on the phone, it just pops right up in front of you. When I'm doing it on a desktop, I'm having to look at different screens. So there's a number of different reactions. Very good. All right, well, looking just for likes there. Good, we got a lot of likes on that. All right, the next type, and we'll talk about these in contrast to each other in just a moment. So the next type is what I call single-purpose emails. This means that it's one message going to many different people. So if you think about it, in our Lutheran church, we've got the 500th anniversary of the Reformation coming up in just a few short months now. We're getting really close. If you are doing a Reformation event and you put that in one email and then you send it to many different people, it's this one consistent message, but you're sending it to a large list. That's the single purpose. So go ahead and react to that. So I'm getting a lot of reactions. I was going to say go ahead and just love that, but we're getting so many different ones. That's great. So go ahead and put that in there. And the last type of email that I think churches should be using is what I call segmented single purpose. Now, this one I probably could have changed the graphic a little bit too, but I was trying to keep it very consistent. So it's one message, one specific purpose going to one specific audience. Now, it's not going to your entire list. So think about it in this way. You've got your Reformation services coming up. You've got maybe an organ recital, and you're going to play 6 different hymns from Martin Luther. And your purpose of that email is not to notify people of the event. That's coming. Your purpose of that email is to request musicians who might want to participate in that. So you're not going to send it necessarily to your whole church because you don't have enough time to vet new musicians. But you'll have a list of people who have played music in the congregation. And so specific list of musicians, specific purpose of that email. Now, you may also want volunteers for that event. If you're inviting people from the community or other churches, you need some assistance on the management of the event. That may be a different email to a different list. You may have a list of people who have volunteered for events before. So same event, same overarching purpose, but different purposes for those emails, so you segment your list. And that's what I mean by those. So if you've done that kind of email where it's not going to your list, I hear often that the churches will have their list and it's a single list. Go ahead and react to that and let me know if you've done that before. And I was going to say the haha reaction, but you can put any reaction on there. If you haven't done that before, you may want to put a tear reaction, a sad reaction, because I think it's a great way for people to really narrow the message. And using this same tool for all 3 purposes, email is that same tool across the board. But it helps you get the right message to the right people. And that goes back to what we've been talking about every single week here. Right message, right audience, right time. So that's the third type of email. And we're getting a lot of reactions from that as well. So I'm glad to hear that. Some tears. I'm sorry. Hopefully this will be a great opportunity for you to move in that direction. So those are the 3 types of emails: the newsletter, the single purpose, and the segmented single purpose. And when you think about how you can use them, there's so many different ways. In the same ways that we talked about with the blog, an email can be used in that way too, whether it's events or prayer requests or requests for assistance. What I want you to think about, though, is whether you're putting it in an email or putting it on your blog post. What is the reaction that you're hoping to get back from your audience? You don't want those reply alls. Reply alls emails are the best way to get people to avoid your email lists or unsubscribe or block you. You want to put the power or the control back in the hands of your recipients. And so maybe you use your email sort of like the outpost where you're drawing people into your blog, and that's where that communication happens, that response. Maybe if you're doing like the single purpose, segmented single purpose where you're asking for somebody to sign up, you're taking them from your email to your website where they convert through a form. That would replace a blog post. Your blog post may be about the event as a whole, and you segment those purposes into different emails. So there's many different ways to do that. I would love to hear some examples of what you've done, what your best results were, or maybe if you spent a lot of time on an email or a series of emails and it just bombed. Go ahead and share that in the notes, and you can maybe do that afterwards as well, or put it up in the group. And if you want to tell a story of how you've leveraged email in this way and it worked or it bombed, let others commented. That would be a lot of fun to hear. So think about that. If you've got an example, go ahead and put that in the group. We're going to move on to canned spam next. And I've learned a lot about canned spam over the years through marketing, but I learned even more in researching for this session. So canned spam is an acronym for controlling the assault of non-solicited pornography and marketing. And it really pains me as a marketer to see the words pornography and marketing in the same line when the verb before that is controlling that. My personal opinion is those are two very different things. But they both are abusing audiences from an intention standpoint. And so these are regulations that were put in place to protect the audiences, to protect recipients of emails. And I think they're very good. So we're going to look at the recommendations, the regulations. I'm not sure the best term to use for that, but we're going to look at them because even if it doesn't impact you directly at the church, they're good best practices. So actually, let me step back and talk about that because I've had the question before, are churches regulated by canned spam? And it's kind of iffy, and I don't want to share legal advice because I'm not qualified for that. But the way that I read it, if you're not selling something, if you're not trying to get people to purchase in a commercial way, you're probably not going to run into canned spam violations. That said, and again, this is not legal advice, this is just my opinion. That said, the regulations implemented by canned spam are really good best practices because they are putting the whole goal around protecting your audience, protecting your recipients. So you should still follow these because they're best practices. So when that question is asked, could I violate this, violate canned spam? It shouldn't be a could I, it should be more of a should I go about doing this if it might put me in violation of that, because my audience probably isn't going to like it in this way. So I would say follow these regulations. You'll protect yourself legally. Oops, I didn't mean to switch cameras there. You'll protect yourself legally, but more than anything, you're doing what's best for your audience, best for your recipients. And so just take the question away and say, yeah, we're going to follow this. So let's take a look at that. All right, we'll go through this rather quickly because I'm already running out of time, but don't use false or misleading header information. And if you're put in an email subject line and the content is not related to that, that's just deceitful. That's just straight up lying to your recipients. And actually, those are both, don't use deceptive subject lines. My apologies, I jumped ahead. But false or misleading header information. The header information is kind of the preview text. The subject line is the very visible. Both of those should preview what is in an email. And if they are not accurate, then again, you're just lying to your audience. This one doesn't imply it as much or apply as much to the church because I don't think of it as advertising. If you are advertising, identify the message as an ad, and the copy is a great way to do that. You'll often see emails coming from CPH where I'll just put sale in brackets to be able to say, hey, this is a sale. That's not to say that all sale emails are bad. Many people subscribe to our emails just so they find out when sales are. In the church setting, it's a little bit different. Let me put it in this way. If you are requesting donations for something, if you're requesting money to support a cause, be very clear about that. Maybe put request for donation or something in there. A lot of people will be ready and willing to give, and so it's not a matter of not doing it, but just being clear what you're doing. If you're asking for something, especially involving money, just clarify that. All right. Next up, tell recipients where you're located. This one shouldn't be too big of an issue for churches, but if you are emailing people in your community, make sure they know that you're in their community. So put your address in the footer of all your different emails. Tell your recipients how to opt out of receiving future emails from you. Just a note that says if you would no longer like to receive emails, just reply and mark unsubscribe. Or many email services will automatically put an unsubscribe link in the footer so that you can't get away from that. Everybody always has that option. Both are very good, and it just gives the recipient a way to say, this isn't really relevant or interesting to me anymore. The next one, honor opt-out request promptly. Well, that just is common sense. If somebody says, please don't email me anymore, stop emailing them. It's that simple. And then lastly, monitor what others are doing on your behalf. And in the marketing world, sometimes we'll hire agencies to run campaigns for us on our behalf. Even sometimes at CPH, we're hired to run some marketing campaigns on others' behalf because we have a full marketing department, and other institutions within the Lutheran Church may not. So that goes hand in hand with CAN-SPAM. But at the church level, think about your volunteers. If you have volunteers who are emailing large groups of people in your church, that puts you on really shaky grounds because they're doing it on your behalf, whether you want them to or not. That's a different matter. But they may not understand all of this. So that's why I'd recommend emails coming from the church should flow right from the church. And using tools like Unite, where we have group features where people can interact with their own groups, that's a better way. That kind of takes it outside of CAN-SPAM because it's just a couple people and they've opted into this common cause, this common group. If you have mass emails going out from anyone in the church, flow those through the church office so that you yourselves can monitor this carefully. So those are the best practices that's why I like CAN-SPAM, because all of those are good things. They don't really put a burden on the church. They're just giving you these principles for how to do a good email. And we'll talk about some other principles in a few minutes when we get into our free download. So the last thing, and I'm running short on time, but I don't have a lot to say about this time, is videos. I put the YouTube logo out there. Could be Vimeo, could be something else. The third option for a great media empire, and I know that phrase is very big, empire. That's coming from Chris Brogan. So if you listened to 2 weeks ago when we talk about the content framework, I explain where these terms come from. But a video portion of your media empire, I think, is where a lot is going. And I see a lot of churches are really getting into video and are downplaying perfection and just being real and doing live video and doing recordings. Like, those are great to be able to see it. For one, it takes less time to just talk about something than it does to write and craft a fancy email or blog post or put images together to just talk about it. And two, that's what people are consuming these days. And when you think about how much video is consumed on a phone compared to a desktop, it's just crazy. That's what people are doing. This little 3, 4, 5-inch screen has become the new TV, and so much video is available. So that's I didn't talk about that a lot today because the principles of blog posts and the principles in emails are similar to what you would apply in video. But video does require the time of setup, of learning how to post videos. I mean, the learning that we've gone through here doing Facebook Live videos has been great, but also time consuming because it's not as quick as a click of a button to go live like you might do for a personal video. If we want to have the different screens and the PowerPoint, all of that, it's a little bit different, but it's been a great learning and great engagement from that. So we'll have more topics on video coming out soon, and not necessarily part of this course because it's really a tactic, and the strategy that we talked about today applies in video as well. So that's why we put on that post that it could replace or supplement your blog as part of your media empire, but it requires a bit more expertise and equipment. So let me take a quick look at questions before I go into our recap and move on and talk about next week. So show email picture again. Sorry, Gary. Let me jump back to that while we're talking here. So, is this the one that you're referring to? I'll leave that up there. Email groups, newsletter, or staff, or leadership. Jane brought that up. Those are all very good examples. You can get far more segmented, even more than that too. So, and then Penny we also put a weekly digital bulletin of announcements on Thursdays for the weekend coming up. Bulletin has all the links to every activity group to connect. This does not replace the regular bulletin on Sunday. That's really cool and a great way to do that, to just show people. And what I like about that is the fact that if I go through our newsletter or bulletin a few days in advance of Sunday service, then when I come into church, I don't have to be as focused on reading and getting the information. I can interact with other people. Now, for me, it's a little difficult because I've got 2 young kids, and often it's spent corralling them. But it is nice to not have to use the time in person at church to find out what's going on at church, but to use these communication methods ahead of time to learn more. So, all right, let's go ahead and wrap up. I want to be respectful of your time. We'll transition back here. There's that email image again. I hope that's the right one, Pastor Gary. Let's switch back to the very end. So, quick recap. Your media empire can be in many formats with many messages, but it should serve one purpose, driving people closer to conversion. And that's what we talked about right at the beginning as well, that content framework. Your media empire drives people back to your website, to your home base where they can convert. And again, your website may contain your blog, but if you view them as 2 different purposes, this will work out very well for you. Speaking of blogs, if you haven't seen our blog post for today, I go into this topic a little bit more in depth, in a different way. But the lists of things that we talked about are described there for your reference too. But what I really want to highlight is the download for this week. And I want to highlight this for a couple reasons. One, I think it's a fantastic download. And 2, I'm saying that because I didn't put it all together. So let me transition over to that. I've got a great team of people who help me out here at for the Church Online Communications Comprehensive. And I want to give a special shout out to Erica and Teresa, our copywriter and digital designer who put this together. And they both spend a lot of their days working on emails and blog posts. And so as I talked to them about it, I said, here's what I'd like to put together, something that describes the elements, the anatomy of a successful blog post and a successful email. And so they put together this free download that goes through and describes all of, I'm jumping around here too much. All of the different elements that goes into each of these. So the anatomy of a blog post, you see title, image, social sharing, all of those different things. And a lot of it we didn't talk about today, so that's why I really encourage you to go download this. And then the same thing for the emails. And then it'll talk about some of the things that are going to can spam, but also some other best practices. So they did this. They did a fantastic job. They asked me to review it. I was like, I don't have any changes. This is so good. So I encourage you to go and download that. The way that you get to that is if you go to, let me transition here, go to our blog and establishing a communication hub for your church. Down at the very bottom, after we go through all of that information, there's this what makes a good post or email. Go and download the PDF. It'll take you to this form. Whoops, it's reloading. I had it pulled up before. Everything's going slow with my internet now. So it'll take you to that form and you can download it. I'll also be putting a link later on today in our group. There we go. That's where you can go and download it. I'll be posting a link in the Facebook group later on this afternoon. Me or one of my team may be. I've got a lunch meeting, and then I've got the Operation Fund, so I'll be busy. You may not see that till this evening from me, too. But you can go and get it right now from our blog post, and I highly encourage you to do it because it's a really great download. And I can say that because I didn't put it all together, but the people who did, I highly respect and trust. So that is the one second to last thing. The last thing which I just mentioned is, wrong one. There we go. Is that Facebook group. And we've had some good discussion on that. I encourage you to join and participate and interact with other people who are in a very similar position to what you're doing. So that's the third thing that I'd like you to do: blog post, download, and Facebook group. Next week, utilizing social media in the church to the fullest. This is a fun topic, and there's a lot that we can cover on this. We're going to talk strategy more than anything, so if you're looking for how to post in Facebook, this probably isn't the one for you, but if you are looking for why you should post on Facebook, those are the kind of things we're going to be talking about next week. So that'll be session 11. It's crazy to think we've only got 4 more sessions to go. So utilizing social media in the church is next week. Understanding search engine optimization the following week. Saving time in your online communications, and then sharing your excitement about your communication strategy. Those are our last 4 weeks. So my contact information is there one last time for you, but I hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. As you can tell, I really enjoy doing this. Talking about this is a lot of fun for me. Talking about it in the context of church makes it even that much greater. And so I thank you for joining me. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the reactions that you are sharing with me to make sure that I'm providing the content that's helpful to you. That gives me that great feedback. And with that, I'll say see you next week. Thanks again. Have a great day.